Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for your attendance at tonight's meeting of the Finance, Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee. We will rapidly proceed through the agenda tonight. Item number 1 is apologies for absence, and I've received apologies from Councillor Lewis, who is substituted tonight by Councillor Wright, Councillor Parker, who is substituted by Councillor Adcock, and Councillor Paul Waring, who is substituted by Councillor Nick Crisp. Are there any other apologies or substitutions tonight? Councillor Grocott.
Thank you, Chair. Apology from David Allport, Councillor Allport. Okay.
Those apologies are noted. Item number 3 is minutes of a previous meeting. Are there any matters arising from those minutes? There was, I think, at the last item, at the last meeting, a request for further information from Georgie, I think it was. Did we all get the email that was circulated after that? Fantastic. In that case, that's absolutely fine. Is everyone happy with the minutes then? Approved. Brilliant. Item number 4 then is the Financial and Performance Review Report for the 3rd quarter. I'll ask Councillor Sweeney to introduce the report itself, and then we will do our usual dissection of the red indicators.
Indicators, not red. Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. What I point out to you, if I could find it, it's on the bloody page, is what people are interested in on this is I think what I'm always interested in is what state the general fund revenue account is in. And at the moment, it's £49,000 to the good. Now, this is as at period 3, which was the end of December. The year end, I think, is on Tuesday, sir? Year end is on Tuesday, and I see no reason at all why we won't achieve a balanced outcome. But anybody wants any questions to ask, feel free. We move on to the performance figures.
Are there any questions or comments on the report itself? If not, those are received, and we will move on to the exciting and colourful, unless you're looking at a printed copy. I don't know if those are exciting or colourful, but the screen version very much is. Unless anybody has any objections, we'll do what we normally do, which is that we'll scroll through till we get to a red indicator. And the first one is ID 1.2, percentage of category A and B food business inspections completed on time. The target is 96, and we are currently at 85.7%. I assume that's a percentage figure. Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Quarter 3, as it says in isolation, was all right, so it's coming back. I think by the end of the year, i.e. Tuesday, it should be back online, or very, very nearly. So I don't see this as a major issue. It's something that was a bit short, as you can see from these figures, but it's been recovered now, and hopefully by the end of Tuesday we should be back online with 96. But you got anything to add to that, sir?
No. Do the committee have any concerns or questions? Councillor Stubbs.
Just to clarify, Chair, thank you. So when you say that we're recovering, will we recover the shortfall, or are we just back to the operating per quarter?
I think they are anticipating on recovering the shortfall by the end of the year. So as you recall, I think last meeting there were a few staff short in the team. They're fully staffed now, so they're proper playing kind of catch up for the whole of the year. So hopefully by the end of the year, touch wood, it should all be up to date.
We'll look forward to the final figures then in the next quarter. The next indicator is 1.16 percentage of stage 1 complaints processed in time, being 20 working days. Target is 85, running now at 80.65. Councillor Sweeney, any gloss to place on those?
No, other than what it says on here, really, it's something that we're catching up on. There are some very complicated things which takes time to do, but I think no, I don't think I have anything to add. Sarah, you got anything to say?
Only that the team are working on reviewing the policy. There's some staff training taking place, so obviously the results reflect that 17 out of the 22 complaints were responded to within 20 days. And the team obviously will wanted that to be 22 responses within 20 days for those complaints, and some of them were a day over the 20 days. So they're conscious about, obviously, making sure that they're meeting these deadlines, and so there's some staff training going on, and they're reviewing the policy as well, just to sort of make sure that they are covering everything that they need to be within that time frame.
It sounds reasonably positive to me that those cases, those complaints that weren't resolved within 20 days, they were hitting at day 21. There's a couple of councillors who'd like to come in. Councillor Bryan, first of all.
Thank you, Chair. Reviewing the policy, does that mean increasing the number of working days to reply, or what does that mean?
I think it just means that they are reviewing the policy in mind of making sure that they are meeting each of those. So if somebody put a complaint in and they know they've got 20 days to answer that complaint, so straight away that complaint needs to be registered. Then within a couple of days, they need to make sure that there is somebody working on that complaint, and that if there is any reason why that complaint can't be answered within 20 days, that there is procedures in place to make sure they get back to the complainant to say, I'm really sorry, but we can't answer this because we're waiting for further information, or whatever that is. So it's making sure that those procedures within the policy are very clear for the staff to follow as part of the review.
So it's not increasing the days so that the percentage is higher?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I think that the targets are set at a corporate level, and whatever the policy is, it's to work towards the targets, not the other way round. Although these targets are open to review, and if we think that there are other corporate targets or changes to these that would be helpful, it's well within our remit to suggest those to Cabinet, if that's something that you want to bear in mind. Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. And I think one of the questions has been answered. So is the target a realistic target? 4 out of 5 actually is probably a good response rate in 20 days. I'll be quite honest about that. 85 probably, it is another step. So maybe that should be part of the review. On the downside though, it does look like the third quarter was actually down on the second and the first from a percentage response. If anything, it's getting worse. That percentage, I know you've said there was training, they were short-staffed. I understand that, but if you look at April, down at the quarters, the key isn't right on that, but they go down. They're not going up. They're not improving. This is the second quarter where it's gone down. So it's more of a comment than a question, really. It's something that, as a committee, we'll probably look for next time as well. Because if that continues to go down, that would show it's not just a one-off quarter issue. It's an issue, and just something to be aware. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just come back on that, yes, I agree that the last quarter 3 that we're looking at now, there was a blip, and it does look lower than previous. I can't say whether we have more complaints in that quarter, and that's the reason why. So in respect to the previous quarters, there might have been sort of 15 complaints and we responded to 14, for example. I haven't got that detail right here at the moment, but yes, I agree with what you're saying, and they are aware and they are conscious of making sure that they meet those deadlines. I think the 20 days is an appropriate time frame for this. It's just making sure that we're perhaps a little bit slicker in responding to some of these complaints. However, some of them are complex complaints and they can't just be sort of answered very quickly. It is. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Chair, through you.
Yes,
the one thing I'd say to that though, and very much like the Chair's just said, the policy reflects the targets. Even if you get 100 complaints, the policy's still there, and then probably needs to, and it'd be tough, don't get me wrong, but the policy drives this. The target, then the policy. The actual figure, it needs to meet policy. But without knowing the numbers, we don't know if it was the fact that there might have been a huge, we know what there was in the last quarter. But if we take that as an average, the performance is down for the third quarter, well, the second quarter running. So it's something that we need to be mindful of.
Thank you very much. We can review that again at our next meeting to see if there is a job of work that this committee would like to undertake in scrutinising that further. In absolute terms, of course, 22 complaints is what I would consider quite a small number. If we were getting hundreds and hundreds of complaints, that would be of concern to me. But in terms of the target, the absolute number of complaints doesn't affect that. Okay, next one that is red indicated is 1.14 staff turnover. Councillor Sweeney.
Once again, I've got nothing else to add really, apart from what's written down here. A number of fixed term contracts and retirements this year, so the resignation figure is much lower. I don't, no, I've got nothing else. I think it's quite clear what that's saying. I've got nothing to add to it. You, Sarah?
Yeah, so on the staff turnover, the indicator should actually be amber this time rather than red, and that's because there was an improvement between the previous quarter figures. So obviously the indicator is being reviewed for next year because that staff turnover figure includes people who've retired, who've been dismissed, who have left for new employment. So we are splitting that performance indicator up for next year so that we can easily identify who was left because they've gone to a new job, or they've left because they've been dismissed, or because at the moment it's all combined together.
So yes, this is one that we've looked at before. Members might remember me saying, well, it's a cumulative annual thing and we can watch the number tick up, and clearly it's ticked up. And if our officer says it should be amber rather than red, that's fine. Have we understood then what's going to happen next year, which is that that indicator will change into measuring two different things, and will therefore it'll be easier for us to track. Councillor Stubbs.
That's absolutely fine, Chair. And I think actually having it as two separate indicators is much better. All I'd say is it's something that's been flagged to this committee as an issue for a year. So I suspect the two indicators will be something that we zero in on very quickly. All right, thank you.
And that's why it's been changed for next year, is because it's the feedback from the committee, and obviously, you know, being able to sort of track those numbers easily with the identifier. But we tend to review the indicators at the start of it, well, the end of each year, ready for the start of the following year. So we've carried on using this one throughout this year, and that's why we're starting from April.
Any other comments on that indicator? If not, we'll move on to the next one that is red, which is 1.8a, the total number of digital online transactions. This again is a cumulative indicator. The target in absolute terms is the number of forms that are getting filled in on our website, I think, although Councillor Sweeney will correct me if I'm wrong. The target is 56,250, and the figure that we've had is for 49,964. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I have. This is one of these figures that being lower isn't necessarily a bad thing, because on the website it might say click. If you're an Aspire tenant, phone this number and go speak to Aspire. So it's one less. Or it might say if you've got a pothole to report on your road, contact County Highways. It's filtering them away before they ever get to our system, which is basically what it's saying at the end, due to it directing the resident to the correct authority responsible for the inquiry, so they're not having to go through our system. So it's a double-edged thing, really. It could be, you could say it's a good thing that it's less, that it's being directed away from ourselves, because the problem they've got is nothing to do with us, if you understand what I mean. So you could look at it both ways, and that's what that bottom bit means. And I think it makes I can understand the bonus of having less people talking to us if they can be picked up somewhere before they get to us to send them to the right place, which is what this is doing. Anything else, sir?
Only that sometimes this can be a little bit seasonal. So when there's the green waste bins renewals, we might see a slight spike then because people are going online to renew the bins, or when the council tax bills come out, there's a slight spike then as well, because obviously there's lots of people wanting to get in touch or find information out. So sometimes it can fluctuate a little bit depending on what time of year we are and what's going on with the authority.
Any comments from the committee? Councillor Adcock.
Thank you, Chair. With digital transactions, including filling in forms on the website, does that include when residents fill in the form to report nuisance like Wally's Quarry odour?
Yes, I believe so.
So in that case, a lower figure would be a positive.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bryan, you were next on my list.
Thank you, Chair. So is this metric, is it not just financial transactions? It is all types of communication transactions. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Stubbs.
I think we need to stay away from double negatives for a start. I think the numbers are the numbers. Claiming victories for something we're not entirely sure about, I don't think we should be doing that. With regard to this then, should it be that the target is better written next year so that it doesn't allow for, and you may well be right, Councillor, that people are being put into the right place before it gets to the end. Let's write as soon as at the end then, or at the start. Let's find a point where it's a fair comparison, because my gut feeling is that we're not, I think we probably are 6,000 behind where we want to be. If we've got less people in contact centres and we're pushing everybody towards online, I'm surprised that that number's below the target. I worry about the people that are falling between the gaps. If it is that actually the 6,000 people that are missing from this target were sent to Aspire, were sent to the county, wherever they needed to go, great. But there's no way of proving that. So can we have a better KPI next time around so that we can measure this properly? Because it might be that it's just a poor written KPI, or it might be that there's still a genuine problem that people aren't being data driven enough.
Okay, I'll ask Councillor Sweeney and our officers to respond in a moment, but Councillor Bryan, is your point directly related to that? If not, we'll do that first.
Maybe. Sorry, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what the metric's telling me. Like, I don't understand what the target's meant to be. I understand the purpose of a target for a contact centre and reducing communication with a contact centre, but I just need some more context as to what we want this number to be and why.
I feel as though this is kind of something for our IT guys rather than for HR or for one of our service leads, not directly responsible for the website, because what I think the metric is, and again, I said at the start of the item, this is people who are submitting, clicking the submit button on one of the forms. There are lots of forms on the website. One of them is about Wally's Quarry. One of them is to register to pay for your brown bin subscriptions. And that's different from the number of visitors to a website, and it's different from the number of unique visitors to a website. So you're right. And Councillor Stubbs raised a similar point, which is how are we measuring it and how can we measure it? I'll ask Councillor Sweeney to respond if he would like to, but I can see that Mr. McKinnon is also keen on saying something.
Okay, this isn't my particular area, but I'll try my best. I think the number of online digital transactions is an indicator to show that the One Council process is working, that we're driving digital connections with the residents rather than them phoning up. So there's less number of people calls, so less calls. So that's why now 56,250, I'm not going to lie, it was probably an arbitrary figure that was a stretch target. The fact that we've done nearly 50,000 when we were from a standing start, and One Council is the whole intention is to reduce overheads or reallocate people from taking phone calls and giving residents the power to do it on the internet or the website. What I think you're asking for, Councillor, I hope that answers yours, Councillor Bryant, and I think what you're asking for, Councillor Stubbs, is that you'd like to see a number of redirected transactions to the other websites. So when we have a record of, we may have had 300,000 and 250 of them have gone to somewhere else. That's the context that you're looking for, so we can take that back. And I hope that answers, Mobley answers.
Thank you. Thanks for offering to take that back. We'll receive an update then at our next meeting on that. I think the answer will be, and again, I'm not the IT guy, but you can count click-throughs. So if somebody comes to our website and says your problem is Aspire Housing, and then they click the button that says Aspire Housing, that's measurable. If they come to our website and it says, oh, your problem's Aspire Housing, and they tut and they roll their eyes and they go over to their fridge and they dial the phone number for Aspire, that will not be recorded. So it may be that we need to think of a creative way of measuring this target or something like this target in future, but I'm sure that big brains will think about it and come back to us. Councillor, before we move on to Councillor Lawley, did you want to come back on that directly, Councillor Stubbs? Excellent. Councillor Lawley then.
One of my questions has been answered because I was going to talk about the traffic in terms of a click, so that's kind of already been considered. The other thing, and I don't know if this is even possible, but for the form submitted, I don't know how much information is in that. Like, is it possible to get demographics? So is it that up to a certain age, yes, they are, but actually we have got a generation of residents that just aren't using it and are therefore getting lost?
It very much depends on the transaction that's been undertaken. So not all forms, for example, would ask for age or gender. It would just be an address. So if it's for garden waste, I don't think we collect the data. I don't know because I've not filled in the form, but I'd be very surprised if we filled in, are you a Mr. or a Mrs. Are you over 60 or under 60 for a bin collection? But there will be certain forms where that information is collected, but what we do with that, I'm not entirely sure.
I think we have in the past considered digital exclusion as a committee, and it's also been something that I know Cabinet have looked at, particularly when the One Council programme was being drawn up. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Lawley? Is there a suggestion you have for our officers to take away, perhaps?
I don't know how easy this is. So my job is data. You'd be surprised to find out. But in terms of if we've got details of residents from a council tax point of view, and then we've got the address, that there's an element there where we could say, you know, that the residents are there are a couple, they were 30, and there's a next door we've got residents where they're 80-year-olds. So it's just a consideration that potentially we are missing a group of residents.
Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, we're conscious about obviously collecting and holding data. We have to be very careful about that anyway. But the My Account, if you heard about the My Account, so you can set up My Account and you put your details in there, and then you can. The idea will be moving forward is that, so for me, example, I live in a borough, so my council tax information will be on there. I have a garden green bin that I will renew every year. Moving forward, the idea is that all that information to do with me as a resident will be within that My Account, that obviously is an authority that we can use and make my service better with the authority, as in, you know, my green bin will automatically renew if I want to, sort of thing, and I have to say I don't want to. Whereas at the moment, it's kind of me getting in touch and saying, yes, I want to renew my bin. And so it's just, like I say, it's getting smarter with the data that we hold.
Councillor Stubbs.
Don't want to labour the point because I think we're all on the same page. I think there's certainly some innovation there. There's data to be captured there that we can help deliver services much, much better, and also find out some of the, because we don't know. What I'm hearing is, although we've looked in the past and we have at digital exclusion, I'm feeling that we still haven't got systems in place where we can say, actually, there's a nice broad sweep across the borough. We can almost discount it. I don't think we're there. I don't think we've got the ability to do that. And actually, I suspect we probably do capture a lot of the data, but we're not using it as we could be. And it might be something for either this committee or another committee. It's probably not this committee, but somebody that's got innovation as part of their remit. That seems a pretty straight. I mean, it'll take a data analyst to do it, but it's pretty straightforward if we've got a lot of the data already, because we're matching databases. This isn't difficult. And I take your point about we have to be careful with databases, but we are, I hope. So the data's there. We just need to be linking probably a couple of systems together. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, since COVID, we've come a long way with the information that we collect and that we hold, and we've got obviously legislation around what we can and we can't and how long we can keep that for. So, with IT and digital information, it is evolving so fast all the time that we are constantly looking at how we can use that data, how we can collect that data, how we can use that data to make our residents' services better for them. So that's certainly something that our IT team are constantly looking at and reviewing.
Right, can I turn the tables and ask you a question, Councillor Stubbs? You said a broad sweep across the borough. Could you clarify for me what that means so I can take that back, because I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, so it could be by age, it could be by gender, it could be by economic social background. Most of the data we've got, we will have it. I understand what you're saying. If somebody's just complaining about a missed bin collection, that might not. But if you've got an address and you've got a surname, it was mentioned, you've got every name in the borough on council tax, so we know where people are. And I think the most up-to-date AI systems will be using all the data and not just having 2 or 3 standalone databases. Which, don't get me wrong, I don't know any council that's probably got an AI system running all their databases. But at the same time, it's coming, and that's how the combined authorities work, because they said they just tap into everybody's databases to do their work. So it's possible, but we can guarantee delivery just by innovating how we use our data. That's coming. In fact, it's already here, and especially in private industry, and it's coming into the sector I work in education as well. We are driven by data now, and it's probably a relatively cheap win. It's not free, but what the value we'll get out of it is pretty good for what we would have to pay for it. And we might not. We might have IT people that have got database backgrounds that could write the code for it, but we've got the data. We just probably need to sort of harness it much better than we are.
Thank you very much for that. To conclude then, the indicator is red. It's very difficult for us to tell whether it's red and that's a good thing, as Councillor Sweeney suggested might be the case, or it's red and it's a bad thing because there are people who are being excluded or unable to transact online. So there is some work there for officers to do to perhaps bring something to our next meeting. Councillor Bryan.
Is it possible or within our remit to invite the Service Director or Head of IT to this meeting, because we have had quite a few queries that are maybe that work stream related, and I just wonder if that might be possible, or please feel free to say no.
We are entitled to invite officers to speak to us about their areas of responsibility. Would you be happy as Vice Chair for you and me to go away and see whether or not it's appropriate, or who would be most appropriate to present a report to us at a future meeting?
Absolutely, and if committee agree, if not.
Because there are some technical questions that only the IT guys are going to be able to answer, but there are plenty of questions, particularly when it comes to transformation and innovation, as Councillor Stubbs said, that are appropriate for other officers. Simon.
I don't think it would be just the Service Director for IT. I think you'd have to bring the Service Director in for performance and that leads on one council, because that is transformation and that sits within Geordie's area as well. So you probably need both of those to answer those questions.
That's an indication of what we might then get at a future meeting. We'll move on then to the next indicator. We'll get on some progress. The next one that's red is 2.6, which is in the planning area. It is the percentage of complainants informed within the required timescales of any action to be taken about alleged breaches of planning control. Councillor Sweeney.
I think this is largely similar to what we had 3 months ago, isn't it? And I think the answer is the same. The complexity of some of the issues just takes time to do. And improvement in performance reflects a more rigorous performance management approach and monitoring, which will be continued going forward. So it's getting better, but it's just a lengthy process. Now, these numbers aren't necessarily particularly high, but because they're so small numbers, 1 or 2 out makes a massive difference. But I've got nothing else to add of you, Simon, on this one. On my planning.
As with the previous one that related to complaints, it is a good thing that the numbers are relatively low. It means that you're either above or below target by a significant number sometimes. Would any member like to comment? Councillor Grocott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Are we thinking the timescales maybe not actually fit for purpose, as in it's too stringent? Obviously, the complexities will change that. And are we putting too much pressure on the staffing on that aspect to be performance-led? Perhaps we need that sort of different timescale rather than anything else.
I know that a number of planning-related targets are statutory or legal, but I'm not sure that this one is. I don't know if any of our officers would like to. No, it's not within their service areas, but it's a worthy point to raise. Councillor Stubbs.
Just supporting that. I mean, if you look at the graph, we've not met it for a while. It almost suggests that the target's unworkable, and I'm all for stretching the staff, but actually it could be counterintuitive for the staff if they see every quarter for the last couple of years that they're not reaching the target, and they're quietly thinking to themselves, well, I'm doing the best I can. Like it says, there might be some absences, there might be complex things. It suggests to me that the target's not a reasonable one. And if it isn't a statutory target, then it probably needs looking at.
The planning team were under-resourced this time last year, but now have got a full complement. But there's a training issue around what the staff will need to do to get this figure, and it is improving, but it's just a slow improvement. But as Councillor Sweeney says, some of these cases are quite complex, and they do try to get them done as quickly as they can. And as a team, they're really proud of their performance because they're in the top quartile now, whereas they were in the bottom quartile several years ago. So they've worked really hard to turn that round. This is just a very difficult nut to crack, and they're trying their very best.
Councillor Lawley.
This may be a daft question. So it states complainants informed within the required timescales. What constitutes being informed? Like, it doesn't have to be resolved, does it?
It sort of does, because it's actions taken. So you have to figure out what actions you need to then go back to the complainant about what actions you're going to do. So you do have to go through. You can't. You write in and say, Mrs. Smiggins Lane has built an extension that she hasn't got planning, or he hasn't got planning. I can come back to you and say, yeah, thank you very much, I've noticed that. That's not actually getting back to you with a resolution. What you need to understand is what we're going to do with it, because that was the point of your letter. So this is the point of us going back to the complainant to say, this is what we found out and this is what we're going to be doing about it, because it is of any action to be taken, rather than just, we've received your complaint, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Bryan.
Thank you, Chair. Are complainants informed that whatever the expectation is, the timescale that they expect it to be at, that it might be a little bit longer? I'm just thinking that if I was the complainant and I was expecting you to reply within a week and it was 2 weeks, I'd be frustrated. Whereas if you acknowledged you'd received it, and in that acknowledgement it said, we are, heavily communicated at the moment and response times may be slightly longer, so bear with us. Is there anything like that to set expectations out to the complainant?
I physically haven't seen a letter, but I think there is that flexibility in what the team go back to the complainant with. It's generated by a timescale that has been agreed, so we have to go back. But the idea is that the planning officer goes back periodically to say, look, we haven't got this resolved, we'll need a further period to get it done. And I think it's that's falling down rather than the initial letter. I think we'll get back to you within 21 days, but actually it might take 3 months to get to the bottom of what's been going on, and we've not gone back to that person for that very particular reason.
With the actual outcome.
Yeah.
I think as long as we're being proactive and letting people know, most people are reasonable. It would just be if I was that complainant and had received no correspondence or no expectations that it might be slightly longer, I would be frustrated. So as long as they are having some communications, then I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Any further on that item? No, the next red indicator is a significant way down. I'm sorry I don't have page numbers on my version of it, but it is number 3.3. It is the number of people accessing the museum's collection in person only. So this is physical visitors to the Brampton Museum, the hidden gem. The target is 63,750. The realised number is 60,069. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think the target was changed after last year's fantastic sort of 850 years, and this year it's taken a bit of a hit because 850 years isn't on. Now I went to a couple of Councillor Fear's talks at the museum on a Sunday, Roman history ones, and absolutely fantastic facility, fantastic talk as well, actually. And he sold out each time, so I think the market's there. But I think basically it was such a superb year for the 850. I think the figures probably need looking at a bit because they will skew the future. We're back to where we were before the 850, but not above it. You know what I mean? I think there's a bit of work perhaps needs to be done on that.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. It is certainly good to hear that events at the museum are being sold out. Are there any comments or concerns that members would like to raise, or are you content to receive that information? Fantastic. The next one then, I won't jump over it. I'll look at the green one, J2 membership growth. They're going gangbusters. I think that's a really good number. I know we're only really going to discuss the red ones, but that's growth. That's not so, you know, we are growing year on year. It's not an absolute number. The growth this year is better than the growth last year, and it's well above target. And I know if he was here, the portfolio holder would be an enthusiast for that. So the one immediately below it, though, is Jubilee 2 customer satisfaction. The number that we're looking at is called a net promoter score, and it may be necessary for Councillor Sweeney to explain to me what that actually means. But it is a red figure. It's 26, and the target is 40. So we're a little way off that. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hunt. I'll pass that straight over to Mrs. Wills, who I think understands it, but I get a bit confused over this one.
Okay, so this is a national indicator, and there is probably 10 or 15 individual areas within how they get this net promoter score. So each year, the organisation who sends the customer satisfaction survey out to leisure users might change the questions within that satisfaction survey, and we don't get to hear what questions there are in that satisfaction survey. So just giving an example, if it was that cleaning was one of the questions that was in a satisfaction survey, which I think was in last year, and J2 perhaps scored slightly under that, then we'd know that we needed to put more resources in to improve on the cleaning. So that's what J2 did, and we improved on the cleaning. So when they next came around and the amount of surveys were done, the cleaning bit exceeded that indicator. However, because there was other areas of questions that they were asking, then there was some that kind of dipped. So it's very hard to gauge. It's quite a hard indicator to actually monitor. And J2 are around about the national average. It's just that we are not meeting the indicator that we've set at 40. So nationally, it's about 28, and we are sort of 26.09 at the moment. It runs from autumn to autumn, so that does actually cover a full year now. They are looking at simplifying this in 2025 because it's not very helpful to anybody, and it changes year in, year out. So they're looking at simplifying it as a customer satisfaction survey for 25, and hopefully it'll be a lot easier to understand. But there's various different categories within this, and it does change every year. So it's hard, and the number of people that actually complete the customer satisfaction surveys change as well. So it's not a great national indicator, if I'm honest.
And just on that, the Sport England run this, and across the country, the indicators are down because the Sport England changed the criteria this year, and there is quite a lot of upset across most local authorities and sport facilities, leisure facilities, that they have been penalised by an outside body without actually being told told of how this actually works. So that's why we're thinking of doing it. We put it in because it was the only thing we had at the time, but it is actually causing us more grief than we need.
Councillor Stubbs, you'll know in higher education about satisfaction surveys being a huge
It's massive. It's a
potential
huge
pitfall, but go ahead.
Very much agree with everything been said. I think it's a target that sets you up to fail. In fact, it's almost, I find it quite ridiculous that I hear what you say, that it might have been the only thing we had at the time. I accept that. But I think if we were that desperate, we probably shouldn't have put it in. On the downside, let's look at the average. So it's 26 against a national average of 28. We're still behind the national average. It's always better to be above the average than below it. So I wouldn't want us to just ignore it, but because it does even show, just using the Sport England average and our figure, that we're below. So it means there's work to be done. Okay.
Okay, anyone else for that? Which is the last of the red indicators, in which case we can close that item and move on to item number 5, which is an update on the Town Deal and Future High Streets Fund. Councillor Sweeney, would you like to introduce that report?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll just go through the salient points really. Start off with the market improvements. That's nearly finished now. Just waiting for the TV to go in. Astley Place, if you see Astley Place now, you can see it's stripped back to a bare skeleton. And I've got to say, I think developers do a very nice job. It's very obvious the way the thing's built, and it's all clean and tidy and waiting to be redeveloped. That's waiting for that. This is going to planning next month. It went through Cabinet last week. You got the Merrill Street one. That's a new thing on top of your place. That's what it's going to look like. The car park is done, is opening. I think we said it would be a bright, airy, friendly, sort of welcoming car park, if you can have that for a car park. And I think it is. I think it's just spacious. And the other one was so gloomy, the Midway, and it's not like that at all. McCarthy and Stone, that's just coming ready to go to planning. The Apart Hotel is a bit later than that, I think. Looking at 2026 for that one. There's plans on here which show you where everything's going. Midway Car Park is, I've always said this is my, I'm most excited about this really than anything else. The guys from Kaplan Centric, the guy who actually runs the place, I went to the LGA conference and he was there for the entire conference, and he was always surrounded by councillors wanting to talk to him. I do think that if this comes off and looks as good as hopefully it does, every council in the country will be coming to Newcastle to find out what on earth you can do with a 1960s/70s monstrosity of a concrete car park. As the Performing Arts Centre's there, nothing's coming along now nicely. Zanzibar Enterprise units, we're having some units on, what's the road called, Simon? Is it North Street? On North Street. On the front of North Street, that's coming along. Walking cycling vision's coming. Sustainable travel is a little bit behind, but we're having a new sort of gateway at Keele University, and then the bus stands on the bus station are having solar panels on the top of them, and having new displays on when buses are due to come. EV charging points in the car park are all there. Digital infrastructure is coming on. Chatley Valley is all done now. Kisgrove train station works is where it is. I'm sure we'll hear about that in a minute. Canal Pathways, they're working on that now. As a child of the 70s, even of the 60s, I used to spend my summer holidays on the canals, 6 weeks every year. And there's a lot of money in canals. There's a lot of money in people who have boats. And I think making a link between the canal and the centre of Kisgrove won't do Kisgrove any harm at all. Shared service hub is something else that's coming along, and that's about it really. This is a year of delivery, I think, for ourselves, and we've had all the plans, we've had all the stuff going on, and now we're actually starting to see things happen in the town. And I think the way we've got money out through the door and are getting money out through the door, you've got to remember that less than 2 years ago, we met Kaplan Centric at Bournemouth, and in 2 years' time, we've gone to where we are now. I think Kaplan Centric love the pace that we work out in Newcastle, and we make things happen in Newcastle. If you have a look on the figures, the high street funds are nearly all gone now. They're just waiting for the television set, and the rest is us coming along. So it's an exciting time to be in Newcastle, and I'll commend this to anybody, and I'll take any questions if anybody wants to ask me. And if I can't answer them, I'm sure Mr. McKenney will be able to.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sweeney. Yes, tonight's update report refers to a number of planning applications that are yet to be determined by the council. So if, like me, you are a member of the planning committee, exercise care when you comment on those. We are under an obligation not to predetermine any of those. I have a feeling, though, that comments will focus on other elements of the report. But would anyone like to comment on any aspect of what they've heard or to ask a question? Councillor Bryan, first of all.
Only on initially on Castle car park that I'd used it, thought it was really good. I can't quite describe it as welcoming and friendly, unfortunately. But in terms of a car park, it was great. Took the kids completely on my own. It felt fine to be in, no worry. And it was really, as far as car parks go, it was a nice car park.
I thank you.
Thank you for that glowing endorsement, Councillor Bryan. I actually think it is welcoming. I think it's so clean and fresh and airy. But I mean, I suppose I would do it, wouldn't I? But I do, thank you.
And just as an update, the car park has been shortlisted for a Construction Excellence Award.
Not most welcoming.
That encompasses every aspect of the car park.
Great work, thank you.
Everything is relative, and what I'll say is that it is certainly an improvement on the Midway car park. It was a necessary upgrade, and I don't know if it's on TripAdvisor, but you could leave your review, and I'm sure that officers will look at ways of being able to make it more welcoming in the future. Are there any more related comments to that, or should we move on? Brilliant. Councillor Stubbs, and I anticipate it's about kids.
Well, no, I'll stay with the car park first. So. We've brushed over the fact that there was people trapped in the car park in the last quarter for a period of time because the barriers were stuck down. So there have been teething problems. We shouldn't just brush over them. I am delighted that they're up for an award. It's great. But we have had teething problems and we can't just ignore them. With regard to Kisgrove Town deal, it's nice to see that the Bradwell element's completed. That's great. Well, you know, it's true though. Kisgrove train station, I'll believe it when I see it, Councillor.
Order one at a time, chaps.
So, Kisgrove train station, we've got an update. One thing I will say is it's incredibly difficult to get minutes out of the Kisgrove Town Deal Board. Now, to be fair to the well, they might be now, but
I'll say it again, one at a time. I will invite officers to respond, but we'll hear Councillor Stubbs first.
But at the same time, to be fair to the councillors not with us tonight, he's the representative for Kisgrove Town Council, and he's quite good at getting stuff to us. With regard to this, the costings, I think there's a much bigger problem here with the Kisgrove Town Station than one paragraph in a report. To say that we've got a discussion at another board meeting that is talking about the costing of the survey works. The survey works are going to be what, 10%, 5%, 1% of the total cost of the remediation work that's required. How far are we down the track with knowing how much that's going to cost and where it's going to be funded from? Because there doesn't seem to be the funds available in the town deal. There doesn't seem to be any additional funding coming from government, be it through the HS2 fund or whatever. At what point does that become a red flag and not an amber flag? Because for many in Kisgrove, it's a red flag now. People just see a cleared area and think that they've been forgotten again. So that's one question. If you want
probably a good place then to stop, and we'll invite our officer to respond after Councillor Sweeney has.
Thank you, Councillor Stubbs, for that. I'll let Mr. McKenney give the detail of it, but I believe the local MP in Stoke North sits on the board of this. So I think if there's more money that they need from government, or pace moving or something like that. I think perhaps a question to him would be and not a waste of time, to put pressure on the MP. Because at the end of the day, it's his government now, it's not mine. So if there's any more money or anything needed, get him to work on that, I think. But I'll pass that over to Mr. McKinley now.
Joy. So, the train station works require a survey. Network Rail have said, under no circumstances can anything happen on any site or any building, can't even replace the windows without a survey being undertaken. We have a price for the survey. What we don't have is approval at the board to undertake that survey, because there are members of the board that don't think it is a priority for Kidsgrove anymore. But we are relying on the fact that it is a priority because it was in the original tip, and we are trying to get that sorted. The risk is what the survey finds. And we don't know that until we've done the survey. If it's a very good survey, well, sorry, they're all going to be very good, aren't they? But if the results come out and they are beneficial and we don't need to spend a shed load of money fixing the ground underneath the station, great, because we might be able to afford to do something with the train station, because the train station project did not include survey or ground remediation works, because we were told by Network Rail that everything was fine. It's now not fine and we need to do the survey. The challenge is, if we do the survey work and it's several £million worth of work, where is that money coming from? Previously, it was indicated that we'll be able to get that money from the reallocated HS2 money going into an LTP, which was going to be administered by Stafford County Council. Staffordshire County Council are still waiting for details of when that money may well come available, and we are on a list if that money becomes available. And this is where I need to be a bit difficult, because previously we had a member of parliament that was at Department of Transport's door daily because he was like a dog with a bone. The new MP says he's doing that, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, but we haven't got any further in the last year knowing where this money is going to be coming from. What the operator is now looking at is, what can we do if the survey works are done and we can contain the costs? Can we still do something with the train station that is within the budget we've got, but is not going to be everything we anticipated, because something is going to be better than nothing, because we're relying on the fact that the people of Kidsgrove have said that this is their top priority, and we're not removing that as an option, because they've given us no indication that they don't want any work done to the and that's one of the blockers in the town deal board, is there is difference of opinion about what the people of Kidsgrove want for the train station, and we're very much as a board sticking to the fact that the original consultation and subsequent consultations and the tip that the town's investment plan that the government approved was, first and foremost, we want something done to the station, and we've got £3 million to do it, and that's what we're trying to achieve. I would guide you to the town deal board minutes, which gives a lot more detail into that. There's been some quite heated discussions at the board around what can and can't be done, but we're still progressing. The chair of the board has asked us to keep progressing the costs. So we know what the survey works. We just haven't got permission from the board to spend those yet, because there's still some discussions to be had around what the station project will or won't look like.
The Stubbs.
Just to assure the councillor, I actually wrote to, still call him Councillor Williams, but Dave Williams in the last 2 weeks to find out what the hell's going on. So I assure you, he's getting in the neck just as much as you are, Simon. I think with regard to the station, there's a real danger, and it feels like it's nobody's fault, maybe Network Rail's fault, but they're never going to take responsibility. There was a huge survey done when we had the bridge done. That land is 50 yards away. It's not going to be massively different. It's, there's still going to be seams under it. There's still going to be tunnels, and it is what it is. That area is, very close to an old mine, and, it's not going to be any different. So I think the remediation work is going to be significant. So the issue then becomes, if we are forced to stay within a financial envelope, I think it's actually almost worse if somebody turns up, paints a few walls, and then goes. I think that will actually be worse than doing nothing, because people will see that actually that's the value we place on this station. I will go back, and I haven't read the last set of reports. I find it very strange that the board's arguing about whether or not the railway station is a priority. I don't know anybody in Kisgrove that doesn't think it's a priority. It almost suggests to me that competing wants on that board are not putting the people of Kisgrove first, they're putting their organisations first, which I'm very uneasy about. And I'd love to be challenged on that, because I can't see why any of those members of the board, and I've mentioned one, Councillor Waring, knows exactly where the priorities are in Kisgrove. He's been a councillor as long as I have. I sometimes wonder that there are too many people from outside of Kisgrove that sit on that board. They have representations in the area, I accept that, but it's not the same as being a resident. So I will go away and I will look at that. With regard to the shared service hall as well.
Do you want me to come back on that
Sure, you can do.
before we move on? It's not just organisations on the board that are questioning the validity of the train station. That's why I ask you to go and have a look at the meetings, because that's actually quite clear of where that questioning is coming from. Further consultation has been suggested to see whether the Kisgrove residents still want the train station, and the board is trying to challenge that by saying it was very, very clear. It came out as first priority every time we spoke to someone. So there is an issue. I agree with you. Painting a window isn't going to cut it, but the trouble is, if we don't do the survey, yes, the survey works for the bridge were extensive, but Network Rail are telling us they didn't extend across the entire train station. That's why we need to do the bits that they didn't do. And they're saying is, if we don't do that, we can't do anything. So we're sort of stuck. We need to understand what the remediation works are, so we can then come up with a plan. At the moment, we have a plan that we can't implement because we haven't done the survey. So it's a question of, some people are uncomfortable doing the survey work because we don't know what that is going to provide, what the answers will be, and where that money's going to come from, and whether we'll get anything out of it, which is that the best use of public money in the interim? But if we can't do anything forever until that survey work's done, it makes sense to do, in my opinion, it makes sense to do the survey work. And if it's massively expensive, we then park the project, and we then start looking for extra money to fund that, or the money goes back to government. It's as simple as that. So there's a few dynamics going on in the board that if you read the minutes, you'll be quite clear where that's coming from. And I'm desperately trying not to get into trouble by saying the wrong thing and straying into the worlds of politics. But if I've said something wrong, it's not because I'm just trying to explain the trouble we've got. We need the survey work or nothing happens. End of.
Councillor Stubbs.
I absolutely agree. I think we're on the same page there. I am surprised, but that's fine. I shouldn't be surprised this long as a councillor, but I am. But that's okay. I will go away and read the minutes, and that's fine. With regard to the shared services hub, obviously, we're looking at this revised scope. Now, I'm aware of why the revised scopes come along, but many of, if not most of this committee won't be aware of why the scope has changed. Obviously, I think the main driving force, or from a financial point of view, is probably the health authority pulling out and not wanting to be part of the hub. How can we call it a shared hub if we're going to have one building on one site and one building on another, and half the building that we were going to have on the Hardingswood Road site, or should I say Station Road site, when this almost feels like it's piecemeal. It's very much using the money for money's sake. Now I want investment in Kisgrove, but let's have the right investment in Kisgrove. You know, I've challenged the King's Academy. You know, what are you going to do with this building that you're having on the King's Academy? They haven't got a clue. They haven't got a Scooby-Doo. I asked the Three Spires Trust, and they're not even sure what it's going to be. They sort of said, "Oh well, we just want to help the community." Well, okay, well, you're having a building, but what's going to be in it, and nobody knows. Can you tell me?
I'll do my very best to tell you. It's called Shared Service Hub because that was the amount of money that was put aside in the tip for a shared service hub, and it was the most significant investment in the plan. So we haven't reallocated it to meaning enterprise units, King's Academy, highways improvements, King Street improvements, etc., because we haven't got authority from the board or from government to do that. So what the board, and again, there are some differences of opinion around some elements of the reallocation of the shared service hub around whether they are the right thing or the wrong thing for Kisgrove. And again, what we've done, I don't know if you remember, but when we put the bid into government, we didn't get the full amount, but we had an ask. So we've gone back to those asks. And so the 3 enterprise units are in that employment growth. The highway improvement works are in there. The shared facilities at the King's was in there slightly, but what the King, they do have a plan. I will defend them. They do have a plan. Well, the chief exec has put the plan together, and she's presented it at the town deal board and has presented a full curriculum timetable of what this will and who will be delivering it. It's not for the children. The children may be able to access it after school, but it will be completely separate and fenced off from, and the connectivity from the canal will be improved so people can access the building from the canal side, etc. So Emily does have a very robust plan. She'd love more money, don't get me wrong. And Emily's the first to admit she'll take as much as she can because education, they can spend it. But she does have a robust timetable. She's got service providers that will deliver against that service plan. And again, that is part of the papers within the Kisgrove town deal.
Just to come back on that, Chair, I think that's quite important. So Emily being the chief exec of Three Spires, or right. So I wrote to Three Spires and I had a response back from them saying they weren't sure what they were going to do with it. So there's a break.
If you'd like to send that through to me, I will challenge them to ask them why they've sent
I will take great joy doing that myself, but I will happily copy you in.
Well, was it signed by Emily?
No.
Right. Okay. Well,
but this is it. The wheels within the wheels. They're not quite sure. I was probably talking to a community officer, and if this is an education project, I understand. So that's fine. So I mean, that's one side. So we've talked about Kings. What is the plan still to do with the smaller building on Station Meadows? Because again, if this is about building, for example, Kisgrove Town Council new building, half the councils don't want to move from where they are. So this almost feels like it's sort of imploding on itself a little bit.
The small buildings that are going to go on the Meadows car park, we're not buying the garage anymore. That was part of the deal for the shared services. Kisgrove Town Council will not be relocating out of their existing facility. 3, maybe 4 enterprise units that we'll be providing are for business growth, economic growth in the area. Again, that's one of the challenges we've got. Where is the evidence that these are required? We know as a landlord across the borough that we can rent small businesses. It's 400 or 500 square feet relatively easily, and it's what businesses are after. Staffordshire County Council have done an extension in Nutton to their enterprise units on the back of the perceived demand, and local estate agents or commercial agents are saying, start small, it's a good idea, and it's relatively inexpensive way of driving some economic growth down that area. So it's not for the town. The town council are not moving into any of those units. They are staying where they are at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for that detailed inquisition. I think we as a committee scrutinise this authority. This authority's representative on the town deal board for Kidsgrove has been quite clear that I think this authority's priorities align with what Councillor Stubbs has been asking for, and also what the people of Kidsgrove expressed in the formation of the town improvement plan, and continue to be the priorities of the people of Kidsgrove. We do not directly scrutinise the town deal board, although we're fortunate normally to have Councillor Waring with us as well, who's able to give us insight. We do not directly scrutinise the other partners involved in delivery of those projects, whether that's the Member of Parliament for Stoke North and Kidsgrove or Network Rail, although we can invite those people to come and address our committee if we want to, if we feel that's necessary. So we will continue to receive regular reports on this. I understand for members there's some frustration there, but I am satisfied based on what we've heard tonight that both the administration and this council's representative on the Kidsgrove Town Deal Board are working to deliver what we promised we would give, both to the last government that funded the project and also to the people of Kidsgrove. Are there any other councillors who'd like to comment on any aspect of the update report? Councillor Grocott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Obviously, I touched on this on the economy in place about extensions on the actual time periods on funding when it's been released. So I think that might be good to get out to people if they can give some time, if possible. Main one I was thinking about, Simon, is Norton Village Hall. I did talk quite a lot with support staff with Jamie Walls, actually, because obviously I'm a former connector with them. And obviously I'm quite passionate that that should go forward. Community centres are one of the major things that we actually supplied into our residents, so that's good. I know we're looking basically to get that formation of the group apartment so we can go forward. So any kind of time period we're looking at there and actual facts, because I'm talking to people, trying to get people involved. Okay, cheers, Simon.
Just in terms of the spend of the town deal, the government came back to all authorities and asked if it would be useful if we went for an extra 12 months on the spend. So we asked that for Kidsgrove specifically, and we also asked for Newcastle as a matter of fact. And the government confirmed that we've now got till March 27 to spend all this money. So whilst it's still problematic up in Kidsgrove, we've still got time to get the projects spent and delivered, or delivered and spent. I have a meeting set up with Jamie when I get back to work next week to push through the one group that have shown an interest in the running of the village hall. And at the same time, I am looking at how I get a tender price for that village hall. I don't really want to use a large contractor because they have large preliminaries, but it's going to be several hundred thousand, multiple hundreds of thousands of money that we spend, and you're going to need a certain level of contractor. So we're working out what framework we can use, where we can use like a local contractor. The guy that's just done the whammy did a really good job. Would it be cost effective to do that again? I don't know, because I don't want to spend a heinous amount of money on site accommodation for a group of builders. And I know they deserve that and it's law, but I'd much rather I get more bang for my buck by building something larger or more quality rather than spending. And so we're looking into that. So we've got planning permission for it now. Two things now have to happen. We need to get the group incorporated as a CIC. They need to have a conversation with our property team about the lease, which is exactly what we did with Kidsgrove Sports Centre, because once they had signed a lease in advance, we then awarded the contractor to build the facility. So those things I need to get a price, and I need to get incorporation and a lease agreed with the group, and then I'll press the button. Sorry, we as a council will press the button for the construction of the facility, because what we don't want to do is build it and nobody is there to run it. So that we are making progress. It's just, it's going to be probably another 3 or 4 months before we've actually got that incorporation sorted. But Jamie and I always, I've told him we need to crack on now.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you for the Question, Councillor Grocott. In that case, the recommendation on that report is that we note it. That report has been noted. The next item is the commercial strategy update. Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the most interesting part, well, it's all interesting, of course, everything's interesting. But if you go on to 2.3, following on councillors, a 3-theme programme has been implemented, one commercial council. So that is coming up with some really interesting ideas, which are still in the sort of being made up stage at the moment. So I can't go into too much detail, but they had something like 60 ideas came forward when they asked the staff on any ideas. Now, some of those 60 aren't practical, aren't going to happen. And there's no point in looking at whatever's left in one big lump, because again, it won't happen. So they're focusing on 3 or 4 points at the moment, and working up what's practical, how it's going to look, and all this sort of thing. And I'm sure that when that's been done, we're only happy to report back to you. But we're still in the make-up stage at the moment, and it's very encouraging, really, what our employees have come up with, and it means I've gone very well. I'm well optimistic on this. But have you got anything to add to that? So I'm not.
No, I don't, Councillor.
Thank you for that update and for the report. I think so long as it's not one council for North Staffordshire, we'll all be happy with that. Do any members have questions to raise or comments to make? No, we're all of one mind, I think, on that. I'm not being political about it. Sure, there's more than one chap who lives in Butt Lane who disagrees with me. Fortunately, none of those in the Westlands, yes. Would anybody like to ask questions, or are you content to note that it is a progress update? It will come back to us again. It is important, but it speaks for itself, I think, that report. In that case, fantastic. We can move swiftly on then to item number 7, which is the work programme. As we discussed earlier, Councillor Bryan and I will go away with the administration and officers to see if there is appropriate future meeting for us to receive word or to be able to ask questions of officers relating to digitisation and the number of forms that are being filled on the website, and be able to give us useful, helpful information on that. Are there any other matters which members would like to see considered for the work programme in future, or shall we move on with our lives? In that case, we will certainly do so. Item number 8 is public question time. Sadly, there are no members of the public present to ask questions of us. Item number 9 is urgent business. I look to administration and officers. There is no urgent business. The date of the next meeting will be Thursday, the 26th of June, 7 p.m. Meeting finished. Thank you very much, everyone.